Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fuel Poverty Action's series of monthly learning sessions, Fuel for Thought from Fuel Poverty to Climate Justice. For those of you who don't know us, Fuel Poverty Action is a group of ordinary people who are fed up with being robbed by greedy energy companies through spiraling bills and rip-off prepayment meters. We campaign to protect people from fuel poverty. We challenge rip-off energy companies and unfair policies that leave people to endure cold homes. That means we take action for warm, well-insulated homes and clean and affordable energy that's under the control of people and communities, not private companies. As for Fuel for Thought, it is our space to share research and lived experience, tackle lies, and clear up confusion as we ask and answer questions with experts, activists, and campaigners. Talking of campaigners, we have we have technically a couple of other Fuel Poverty Action employees here tonight. We're going to first hear from Stu, our lead campaigner, who's going to do a little campaigning introduction to the session this evening. Stu, take it away.
Thanks very much, Mal. It's great to be here tonight with so many of you to discuss an essential piece of the puzzle in our battle to make green fair. Fuel Poverty Action launched this campaign earlier in the year to demand that we, the people, get our fair share of cheap to produce energy from our wind and sun. For years as a movement, we've talked about renewables being the pathway to lower bills for all of us, and they could and should be a pathway to guaranteeing all of our energy needs, what we in FPA call energy for all. But what we've seen instead is the cost of the green transition actually loaded on top of already sky high bills, while producers of fossil fuels and renewables line their pockets with our incomes. And Reform and the far right have taken advantage of this, blaming the move towards cleaner and cheaper forms of energy for problems created by a system that guarantees profit while stripping us of our essential needs. We also see massive inequity where those able to benefit most are often those least in need, like electric car owners receiving electricity to charge them at half the rate fuel poor households have to pay to charge storage heaters and hot water tanks, or homeowners with further savings who can afford to install solar panels and see their bills come down. Whereas, as will be discussed tonight, people in rented accommodation and social housing receive nothing for electricity literally being generated on the roofs of our own homes, and instead just acting as money makers for landlords and housing developers. So we're so glad that so many of you wanted to join us tonight because we're going to need your help in the next couple of weeks. We've got a petition to make green fair in collaboration with 350, who I know helped bring along a lot of you tonight. If you've not already signed it, please do so. I'll drop a link in the chat if no one else beats me to it. And we will be handing this in to the Department of Energy on the 1st of July as part of a rally against energy price spikes. Our bills are expected to jump by over £200 on this day because of Trump's illegal war in the Middle East. So if any of you here tonight are in or can get to London for the demonstration, then please join us and raise your voice against further fuel poverty and for real solutions, a clean energy future that meets all of our basic needs. So that's Wednesday, 1st of July at 10 a.m. in Westminster. Hope you can make it, and I'll hand over for the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Stu. I did beat you to it and put the link in the chat just so you know. We are today joined by three, if not four, other speakers. We're going to hear from Carol Brook first, who's a social housing resident living in a property with rooftops to solar. The solar installation effectively raised the energy efficiency of Carol's home without addressing issues of damp, mold, and nor lowering bills in Carol's home. Following Carol, we're going to hear from Ashley Grealish, who is the co-founder and CEO of Windfall Energy. A company is bringing affordable installation-free, bill-reducing batteries to all homes, not just people who can afford it. Very exciting to have you here, Ashley. Thank you. And we're going to hear from Jonathan Bean, who is our policy and parliament lead here at Fuel Poverty Action. Thanks for being here, it's Jonathan, as well. And we should also hear from Daniel Edelston, the co-director of the Power Station film, which is a film in which the people who made it, essentially they set out to turn a whole street solar, which they achieved with a public stunt. I haven't seen Daniel here yet. I'm assuming he hasn't arrived, but I'm going to hand over to Carol. Thank you for joining us tonight, Carol.
Thank you, Amal. Well, my name is Carol. I live just outside Cambridge in social housing. When I moved in, the EPC certificate gave an energy rating of D58. I moved in 2021. In 2023, the council, South Cambridge Council, wrote on us to contact Dyson Surveyors for an up-to-date EPC survey. When I received the result of that, I was shocked because the EPC now had jumped up from 58 to a band B at 85, which I couldn't believe, because the house in the 2 winters I'd lived in it had been very, very cold. There was condensation and then subsequently black mold on the bathroom wall, which is north facing. I complained to the council. They, with a letter from the head of housing, Peter Campbell, said that the benefits of the solar panels that were put on the roof in 2014 would probably, this is a quote, probably would outlay the deficiencies, well, the condition of the property, which weren't up to current building reg standard. I know the installation was installed in 1975. I believe it is the UFFI installation. When I asked the contractors to take bricks out of the wall, that was just crumbling white insulation, about 1 to 2 mil thick. When you touched it, it crumbled like icing sugar. So it's ineffective. It's 50 years old. When I put this to the council, they said that since it's now a band B, a highly efficient, energy efficient property, there was nothing they could do. There's no grants for upgrading it. I took the complaints right the way through the council, arguing that with the solar panels on the roof, which were installed under the rent-a-roof scheme, allowed the supplier of the panels to take the feed-in tariff, whereas the residents got no benefit whatsoever, except for the theoretical £350 a year that we're meant to save. The heating is gas. There's no battery storage. There's no meter to show what or how much or when power is being used. So there's no way that the tenants can find out how much or when they could potentially use the heating. And of course, you use the electricity. And of course, when you need the heat, i.e. in the winter or first thing in the morning, the solar panels are generating virtually nothing. I took the complaint to the housing ombudsman, who unfortunately treated it as whether the council responded to my complaints in time rather than the substance of my complaint, which was that EPC Band B on a property with poor wall insulation and no floor insulation, which means I'm losing 30% of the heat out of the building. Seems crazy. So yes, the building is still hard to heat, and like other council tenants or people on low incomes, we just simply can't afford to heat the house and keep it up at a comfortable temperature throughout the winter, because the bills would be crazy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, for sharing your lived experience, Carol, with us. It's much appreciated. I know you got in touch with us a while ago. Yeah, to share this, and you've spoken about this on Fuel for Thought before.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming back.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to hear from Ashley. Maybe you can also feel free to respond to some of Carol's points there, Ashley, if you want to.
Of course. So I guess I'll start with a quick kind of personal introduction. So I'm Ashley. I am the founder of Windfall Energy, but also I suppose I've been in energy tech for a while now, but kind of outside of that, I've done a lot of work on campaigning and working on climate and energy issues. So working across energy access in East Africa, but also doing a lot of work with mostly Greenpeace, speaking about energy, activist roles around energy and things like that. But I'm here to tell you a bit about Windfall Energy and what we're doing around this. So our mission, what we set out to do is make it easy for everybody to benefit from the clean energy transition. Because today, when we think about the clean energy transition and the kind of the clean tech that you can put in your home, it might look, the kind of home that you picture benefiting from that might look something like this: a large suburban home with panels on the roof. There's an EV charging in the drive there, perhaps even a heat pump or a battery hidden in the garage. Like, that's great, right? If you have a home like that, it's amazing that this home has got this clean energy tech in. But what we found, or what we knew, is that most homes don't look like that. I mean, I live in London. I live in a flat. I've worked in climate and energy for a long time, but I couldn't use any of those products because I live on the fourth floor of a flat where you couldn't put solar on the roof, couldn't put the EV in the drive. And I thought a lot about this. I thought about the people around me as well. Like, is this just me? No, it's my mum who lives in North Dorset. She lives in a kind of shared ownership, a small terraced home where whilst I constantly nag her about putting kind of clean energy tech in the house, practically she can't. Like, the roof's not big enough for solar. She doesn't have a driveway. Where she parks her car is really far away from the house, kind of hidden around the back. All the things like that. I think about my sister. She rents a house in Devizes, and the landlord, her boiler broke over Christmas one year, and they took long enough to fix that. There's no way that landlord's going to invest in kind of energy improvements. So I thought about this, and the realization I came through is, like, the majority of people can't do that vision of the clean energy home that often gets talked about. Most people are either in flats, rentals, or smaller homes. So let's try and solve that. But the big question is how. So let me talk you through our thinking here. I've got a chart. Sorry about the chart. The chart is the energy in the UK over the last 5 days, or the last 5 days from when I took the screenshot a couple of days ago. So over the last 5 days, where did energy on the grid come from? you've got these big yellow spikes every day where 30% of the energy is coming from this. This is solar. This is solar on the grid that you see around, on the side of the road connected to the grid, that sort of thing. So we get up to 30 or 40% of the energy being generated and consumed in the UK comes from solar power at certain times. Like Carol said, that might not be the time that you need to use it, though, but it's there. There's also wind power. Wind power often peaks during the middle of the night, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. That's when we have the most wind power available because it's windy in the middle of the night, but because most people aren't using a lot of energy then. So you got like up to maybe 80% of energy coming from wind or solar and solar at certain times. And the rest of the times you have gas filling in the gaps. And what we know is the gas is where the expense comes from, right? Gas is expensive as a form of energy. Renewables are cheap. So our bills are going up because we're using gas more and more at those peak times. What if we can make every home use more energy when renewable energy is abundant? Like that would be amazing, but we can't, back to the same point, we can't say everyone put on your oven at 4 a.m. In the middle of the night to cook dinner. Like it's impractical. So, I mean, there is a solution, and the solution is batteries. Batteries can be told to store power when renewable energy is abundant and cheap, and it can be shifted then to be deployed back to your home when you need it. So here's a kind of like worked example of that. So this is another chart, apologies. Try not to show too many charts, but this is 1 day of energy use, right? And so typically most homes have a peak in energy use during the early evening hours. So heating might be coming on to preheat the home. You might be cooking on an electric hob, electric oven, things like that. And I'm sorry, I should say I'm talking about electric here, not gas. Might be like TV, desk, whatever, using energy as well. So you always see this peak in energy during the early evening hours, smaller one normally in the morning, and then not much during the daytime and during the nighttime. But during the nighttime is when, as I said, there's normally an abundance of clean, cheap wind power available. In summer, we can talk about solar in the middle of the day, but let's stick with wind. So what if we just charge up a battery in your home during those early evening hours and then push that power back to your home during those early evening hours? You can save quite a lot of money on your energy bills, up to £250 a year. But the problem is, I talked about batteries at the start. Some people have them. They're really good if you can have them. You can put them in your garage and get them installed by an electrician, but it's really expensive. And I mean, I don't have a garage, so I can't put it in there. So we've designed a battery that should make that far more accessible. It's a small battery suited to the energy use of most homes, not larger homes. I mean, there's one behind me. It's physically quite small. It's designed to be in your home, designed to look nice. So you actually want it in your home, not like a kind of ugly bit of kit that you have to hide away. Critically, it's no installation is needed. So you can plug it straight into a socket. So you don't need to get an electrician and pay hundreds of pounds to get that install. And all it's doing is working with your energy supplier to store energy when it's abundant, when renewable energy is abundant and cheap, and power your home back through that socket to power your oven, your kettle, whatever it is during those peak times. So we've created this. This is, I think, a great solution that can work in most homes, but there's something that we need to address, which is at the moment we sell this as pre-orders, and it costs £1,000, and you can save £250 on your bill every year. We realize that is still an expensive purchase, right? Like not everyone could go to spend £1,000 to then get the payback over 4 years. So we're working quite actively with a number of different people to build a proposition around this that allows people to get this for zero upfront cost and save money on their bills at the same time. So we've been working with DESNZ on this about how we can take some of the funding that's available for for clean energy tech and apply it to solutions like this for the majority of homes. But also been talking to energy suppliers. So how can we bundle this into a tariff with your energy supplier so that together people can get access to this no matter what type of home they're in, it will work, and then they can afford it. You can get it with zero upfront cost and instant savings on your bill. Unfortunately, that's not all quite ready yet. So what we've done is we've launched a version that people can buy outright, and we're working quite hard on getting this joined up proposition ready to go soon. But this is one way that we see, if you can't put solar on your roof, this is a way that we think we can get access to the benefits of clean energy transition for far more homes. I'll leave it there, and happy to answer questions in the chat or later in the discussion, but I'll pass it back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. That was great. And I know that for me, I do love a chart personally. So those were very welcome additions to your presentation. Next up, we're going to hear from Jonathan Bean, our policy and parliament lead. I am going to share my screen so that I can flick through Jonathan's slides. Here we are. There we go. Can you all see that?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah. Jonathan.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, just to say, I've got a slightly dodgy connection tonight. So if I freeze, I will unfreeze, hopefully about 5 seconds later. But based on Ashley's presentation, I think it's happening maybe twice in 7 minutes. So apologies for that first. Firstly, just to say, I think the windfall battery is brilliant because, we need to democratize green tech. And the lucky people with batteries are getting huge benefits, but obviously almost everyone else doesn't have batteries, and being able to have something that everyone could potentially have in their home would be absolutely amazing. There's obviously been a lot of talk about plug-in solar, but in many ways, plug-in solar is a bit trickier because, not everyone has space actually outside to put solar. You've got to fix it. You've got to have like an outside plug. So there's some complexity around it that actually the battery doesn't have. So, and obviously they could be worked in combination as well. So that's brilliant. So, I think it's really exciting, and hopefully it is available to everyone on a zero basis so that everyone can get it as soon as possible. So really looking forward to hearing progress on that. I'm going to talk more generally about solar. So I'm not going to talk about particular tech. In fact, I think one of the challenges about kind of solar and batteries at the moment is there's so much exciting stuff going on. There's so much opportunity to kind of democratize this, solar and storage to provide it to many more people than get it today. But it can be quite complicated. And, we need to step back a bit and say, well, given all those different types of ways that people are getting solar and storage, how do we have some general principles to make it fair for everyone in the kind of spirit of what Stu was saying at the beginning about making green fair? Because solar is quite complicated, and it varies on like where you live, and that makes it harder to make it fair in many ways. So we need some kind of general principles to make it fair. So I'll just talk through a few of the issues around it. So if we can go to the first slide, Mal, that would be great. So just to recap, about 6% of us have currently got solar. And it kind of went through this boom back in kind of 2010 to 2015, where there was this very generous feed-in tariff subsidy. So there was kind of a big activity, but it was actually kind of too generous. So the government in 2016 cut that subsidy. So that kind of, that boom subsided, and it's now booming again. Obviously, costs of solar and storage have gone down a lot. So it's more cost effective now. Energy prices are higher, so people want ways of getting cheaper energy, and also there's this huge amount of government grants about to come out that Ashley talked about with the Warm Homes Plan, 15 billion, and this idea of tripling solar access by 2030 to over 15%, which obviously is a huge leap from today, but still 15% is obviously leaves 85% of us without solar, even in the government's plan. So, what about the other 85% of us is the question. And obviously, plug-in batteries would be one way of filling that gap. So that makes that interesting as well. But the issue is there's lots of big differences and benefits. So I want to talk about that in a bit, if we can go on to the next slide. So those people that got that original feed-in tariff, they've actually made thousands of pounds. It was incredibly generous on a kind of 25-year subsidy. So those people are, kind of sitting pretty, particularly obviously at a time where a lot of people are really struggling with bills. They got a very good deal, but it's only a few people that got that. And as we've heard from Carol, some people in social housing, for example, even where the landlord was getting this great deal, themselves got very little benefit. And there wasn't really any regulation around like making sure that people got a fair amount of the benefit, even when there was a generous subsidy available in the system. And then some people may have heard of these Octopus Zero Bill homes. There's a few thousand of them now, not that many, but in those homes, people get up to 10,000 kilowatt hours, which is pretty generous, depending on what you're running with that. If you've got a heat pump, that would definitely cover it, even in quite a big house. If you've got kind of old-fashioned electric heating, that's actually eats up quite a lot of power, but that's still pretty generous allowance. So that's a pretty amazing deal, but only people generally in new build homes are getting that zero bill deal. So again, it's amazing, but only a few people are getting it. And then Octopus have also got this tenant power idea where it is using shared solar assets and shared storage that in theory give benefits to flats, but the saving is only like 20 to 30% on electricity. So again, a series of very different benefits for different people, which creates a bit of a problem. And then plug-in solar is kind of, one of the new ideas of government, making that legal in the UK, maybe saving you £100 a year. So there's these massive differences between people getting a few pounds, people maybe getting, £100 to £300, and people getting, potentially over £1,000 a year of benefit. So massive differences in benefits. And then most people aren't even getting any. So that's clearly an issue here. Next slide, please, Emma. I feel like I'm doing a COVID briefing with this next slide thing. So why are they these big differences? So we've got the legacy benefits. Obviously, we've talked about the feed-in tariff already. The fact that social landlords, and in fact landlords in general, are allowed to kind of decide what benefits they take for themselves. There's kind of no regulation. Obviously, some homes with really big solar arrays and batteries are going to get huge benefits, which is more the kind of Octopus Zero home model. The tariffs themselves make a big difference. So this is a big problem, I think, that quite often when maybe on government schemes solar is put in, are people actually put on the right solar tariff? Because there's big differences in solar rates, and there's also big differences in kind of time of use tariffs and whether people are actually able to access those and know how to control those. So there's a lot of complexity in the system, which is great. If you're an energy geek, you probably, get really excited and join a group and they're all comparing how much money they're saving, how smart they're being. But if we're going to make this available for everyone, we need to make it really simple and much fairer. So how do we simplify things so that, more people have access to more benefits and they don't have to be energy geeks? And particularly those, for example, in flats and rentals, how do they get more of the benefit? And obviously Windfall's a great way of doing that. And there are other ideas. There are other companies, just to be fair, to point out that there are shared solar technologies and shared battery technologies available, but again they're not in that many homes. So there's a huge unmet need for these kind of new shared technologies. Next one. And then obviously there's huge differences geographically as well. So London, for example, is a real solar black spot, which is a bit of a shame because obviously, as we all know, there's loads of wind energy happening up in, particularly in Scotland. And quite often we've got excess energy in Scotland, and we're actually down south where we're actually short of energy. So there's a huge shortage of solar in London, which seems like, you know, a real missed opportunity. It's very high in Wales and in the southwest, but actually when you get down to a local authority level, the differences are actually extraordinarily high, from like 0.5% to 15%, which shows it's not just about kind of, you know, where in the country you are or what housing you're in. It's also like some local authorities have made a massive effort and some have not, which worries me, because obviously the government's going into putting more control in local authorities for a lot of this retrofit money through the Warm Homes Plan. And if these differences are driven off local authorities, then there's a danger the kind of inequality between local authorities could get reinforced by what we've seen already with these differences. So that it feels like we need some kind of minimum standards for solar and some targets set by central government, so we don't get this kind of huge inequality by area as well as by housing type, for example. So moving on. So the tricky thing is, how do we actually kind of get fairness? Because there's such a massive range in terms of how many people are getting solar, what benefits people are getting. You know, should it be that everyone gets the same pounds benefit or the same percentage benefit, which obviously would be ideal? Or should there be at least some benefit for everyone, so that even if you don't have solar or storage in your actual home, that you could get it either by some shared asset locally or even spare grid solar, for example. So on sunny days, some people get free solar or half price solar if they're on the right deal with the right energy supplier, but there's no universal deal, which seems like there should be a universal deal for everyone. There's no reason why someone with one supplier should get it and someone with another supplier next door should not get it. So I think there needs to be more kind of standardization of benefit, so that everyone gets the benefit, not just those people who kind of know how to navigate the system. And with this massive £15 billion coming in from government, I think the public subsidies should be guaranteeing a minimum level of benefit. So if you're tapping into some of this £15 billion, you've got to actually guarantee a benefit to residents. Now, in theory, this is supposed to happen on government schemes. They have something called the annual bill saving, which is calculated in theory when they do the work or provide the asset. But we know that what these promise and what they deliver in reality is often massively different. So we believe that it needs to be a guaranteed saving for the actual resident, not just some theoretical thing on a piece of paper that no one ever sees. So actually guaranteeing the benefits. And then including batteries, either to increase the benefit of solar, so to store it if people aren't home when it's sunny, or that can also be used alone. So for those homes that can't have even a plug-in solar, it could be used instead to give benefit. And then there's a whole issue about kind of shared solar in terms of shared in a building or shared locally. And government at the moment is actually doing a consultation on kind of shared battery options, which we're hoping everyone is going to potentially feed into, to say, you know, this has to offer fair benefits to everyone in terms of bill savings. That's the kind of thing that we're looking to do. So the next one, Amal. So making it fairer, landlords. So one way of, you know, we've got this legacy problem with this old feed-in tariff, where we've got residents like Harold that are not getting the benefit, even though the landlord or the company that did the scheme might be still getting these huge subsidies. And those subsidies, feed-in tariff, are going on all our bills. We're all paying for that. So it's kind of crazy. So even though we can't change the past, we could, for the remaining period of these subsidies, actually force landlords to give that saving directly to residents. I'm sure if there's any landlords on this thing, they may have some different views on this, but that certainly is what I think should happen. We can't change the past, but we can make it fairer going forwards. The warm home subsidy should have some minimum guarantee of saving for all residents to unlock that £15 billion. I think the plug-in solar, rather than pushing out through like Amazon and Aldi and stuff, we need to make that accessible to everyone. And there is a pilot. Government has actually agreed to do a pilot on that using local authorities. But obviously safety is important as well. I think it's important that these things are fitted correctly. I'm a bit worried about, potentially people not fitting them correctly or putting them on extension cables and stuff. So I think if it's done properly, it could be brilliant, but it needs to be done properly, including storage where possible, and then making sure that everyone's on the right tariff. So if a government scheme puts solar and or batteries into a home, they should be put on the right tariff, which often doesn't happen. So people are missing out on a lot of the benefits. And just this general idea that we should have everyone getting access to spare solar on the grid or locally, rather than just people who are signed up to the right schemes, who tend to be the more geeky or more digitally engaged people. They're getting lots of free or half price or cheap energy, and everyone else is missing out because it's only available if you're kind of on the ball. So it should be available to everyone. That's my view on that. Next one, I think we're almost over actually. Probably running out of time a bit. ML. Yes, so what I'm hoping is that other organisations and other people on the call could kind of help us lobby government to include build savings guarantees in any grant scheme like the Warm Homes Plan, and for local authorities to have solar targets so we don't get this huge unfairness between 0.5% and 15%, depending on where you live. Like 30 times difference is crazy. Including this idea of bill savings guarantee in consultations like this community battery consultation that's ongoing. I can put a link in the chat if people haven't seen it. Supporting initiatives that reach more households like flats and rentals. So, we'd be supportive, obviously, of things like Windfall that help do that. And there's other stuff also that's helping. So supporting other initiatives, not just government stuff, but companies as well that are doing the right thing. And importantly, stopping bad actors like cowboy installers. So we've seen, a lot of dodgy solar installs that either damage people's roofs or are not set up correctly, so people aren't getting the benefit. That needs to be obviously stamped out. And the final point, going back to this EPC question, is that to stop this exploitation by landlords of just using solar as a way to get to EPCC plus, so that they are able to rent the property out. That needs to be stopped. But equally, government itself is there's a risk of them exploiting it, because in the way that government defines fuel poverty, if you're in a EPCC plus, you're defined as not being in fuel poverty automatically, regardless of the reality. So we've also got to not only stop landlords doing this and local authorities, but we've got to stop central government also using solar as a way to, if it's not actually delivering people the savings, then it shouldn't be seen as getting people out of fuel poverty. It needs to go back to the reality of, are people actually out of fuel poverty, or is it just like manipulating the system to make it appear that people are out of fuel poverty? So there is a danger that solar is used as an excuse not to fix other things, which is obviously Carol's a very real example of that. But I think it's more generally a risk in the way that the system's set up. I think that's it for now. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you so much for that, Jonathan. Much appreciated. And just a reminder that, we will be demonstrating about this on the 1st of July. So please, if you haven't already, make sure you join us. You join us then, if this is all things appeals to you. We have one final speaker for you this evening, Daniel Edelstein from Power Station. Thank you very much for being with us, Daniel. Dan.
Hello. Hi, thanks for having me. I can see various people yawning and thinking, "Oh my God, not more of this." But I'll be really quick, and I promise to try and not be boring. Is it okay? Can I share a PowerPoint?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
That doesn't sound That doesn't sound promising, does it, in terms of whether this will be boring or not? But I will. So let me just, how do I do it? Share desktop. There we go. And now I'll just do a, hold on, view slideshow. Okay, so Power Station is a project. It's both a film and a sort of community um, project to try and turn one London street into a renewable power station. That's the idea. We came up with it during lockdown, me and my partner Hilary, because we just worried about the climate crisis, and it felt to us that the government wasn't doing enough. We were all stuck in our houses, so the question that we had for ourselves was, what can we do from the situation that we're currently in to try and make an impact on the world around us? And those WhatsApp groups that sprang up during lockdown were, really interesting, because it felt as if the sort of the community spirit was really resurging, and we wondered, many people were saying things like, we'll help you do your shopping, or, does anyone need, I don't know, some sugar or something like that. And we were like, does anyone want either free solar panels or highly subsidized solar panels? And it went down like a lead balloon in the group chat, because it sounded like nonsensical. But our idea was that, why is it so difficult for people to be able to afford to, get solar or renewable energy technology if we're in a climate crisis, and if the whole point of having a government is that, it should be protecting us from environmental harm or economic harms. Why are we all sort of, struggling to pay bills? Why are energy bills so high as well? And shouldn't we be putting, people and planet above profit? And we should be creating very simple schemes where people can literally press a button and get solar. So what we did was we decided that we would basically, I should say that we were also inspired by Ann Pettifor, whose book, The Case for the Green New Deal, had this amazing chapter called Every Building a Power Station, or I think that was the name of the chapter. We also really like, as I'm a filmmaker, my wife is an artist, Hilary, and we're the collaborators that were doing this. We also really like the phrase from David Graeber: protest is like begging the powers that be to dig a well. Direct action is digging a well and daring those powers to stop you. So that was kind of the method, or the idea of, let's just use this concept of what we would do if we were the government to provoke the government and to put them to shame, really, about why they're making it so difficult, for people to get hold of a very simple technology which has existed actually for over 100 years, solar. So, we realized it wasn't a technological innovation that we needed. It was an innovation in the imagination, that we could do this if we wanted. So we took, I think this is from Google, these images of every like house on the street, and we're in London, so it's a kind of solar black spot, as one of my, one of the earlier speakers said. Actually didn't know that at the time, but then we went round every single house on the weekends, and we were asking, would you be interested in either free or highly subsidized solar? Our plan is to sell artworks, and we'll use the artworks to help fund the solar. Would you be up for being filmed? Was another question, and I think, oh yeah, and the third question was, would you put a power station sign, a little bit like this, in your window? So we had three questions. Oh yeah, and would you be filmed? That was the other thing. So if they responded, you would color code their responses, basically. So if it was blue, they would say no to everything. If it was green, that would probably be yes for solar. If it was purple, they'd be filmed. And if it was yellow, I think they'd put a power station sign up. And then if we were filming them, we were asking them, are you worried about the climate crisis? Open-ended question. Are you also worried about the cost of living crisis, which began to engulf us all during lockdown? And so the answers were really interesting, because then we began to get, through knocking on people's doors and chatting to them, we began to really know our street in a way which we hadn't up until that point. And it was so beautiful because I was quite, probably like a lot of people, a little bit out of my comfort zone, knocking on the doors of my neighbors and offering them solar. I felt like I was trying to sell, some kind of, like I was a door-to-door salesman. The only thing was that the offer was genuinely good, but it didn't matter because it still felt like because the offer was almost too good. So some people were not sure if we were for real or not. But we soon galvanized the neighbors. We held events on the street. We got lots of people holding those signs, taking pictures. Then we got into this little, like, very local substation, and we used it to print our own artwork money. And we said, like, we, the people, give ourselves the power of government central banks to address injustice. These greenbacks are an emergency currency and a demand note, taking and demanding action on the crises of our time to rebuild the infrastructures of our cities, societies, and imagination. This note constitutes a promise to invest 50% in building a power station and 50% in building community wealth. So we were like very keen that we work deeply, within the kind of grassroots of our area. These were some of the banknotes, which were called greenbacks because they were backing Green Deal. And effectively, the currency was designed as an artwork. So if people bought it, they were buying into our project. They'd get the banknotes or the artworks from us, and then we would use that money to buy solar and to also put into some groups in the community that were doing grassroots work around the area. This was the website. We still have a website. So if anyone wants to visit power.film. Selling the artworks didn't make us enough money, so we ended up having to sleep on our roof for 23 nights while crowdfunding. This image is quite kind of bed knobs and broomsticks, and there is an element of the kind of maybe like the Ealing comedy in our film Power Station. It's very much a sort of DIY. We can do this. Can do kind of British style film, but I think it's a film that captures a sort of a spirit of community in Britain, which has become a bit lost during all these toxic, Reform UK times. We've always been really interested in our relationship to the City of London and the relationship between the City of London and the vast impoverishment of almost everyone. So we were filming the city, and it pretty much appears in all of our movies. We also made lots of, like, a model of every house on the street and showed which ones have got solar. I think it's 25 so far out of there. And then we had real troubles actually after we raised £100,000 on the roof. We then had real trouble actually getting anyone to install it because the quote basically doubled. And so we decided that we'd hold a celebratory sunflower festival on our street. And somehow by creating that sort of positive image and removing all the cars from the street, somehow that would help us get the solar installed. Because clearly you can't have a celebration without something to celebrate. So we were kind of pushing for it to somehow happen, and that did happen. And I think this is my last slide. This talks about, like, the power of art being subversive rather than authoritarian, lying in its connection to the ability to make with the ability to see, and then basically inspiring others to see that they also can take action and make things happen. I lied because there's other slides, it seems, but not too many. But so this is our film Power Station. It's come out in the cinemas. I think it's been in about 150 to 200 cinemas so far, and it kind of plays. It doesn't play all at once. People just book it, and it's also been requested by 300 communities. We also have a booklet on our website which is free, which is on how to start doing your own street. It can't answer all the problems, and there are still many obstacles to get over. And I think the chief obstacle to overcome is the obstacle of how people can afford to pay for solar and battery. And it was great to just catch a bit of Ashley's presentation earlier on, and the democratization of getting this technology is really what it's all about. We're very keen to try and innovate, using a cooperative model to try and create a sort of financial solution where people don't end up with these very big bills at the beginning, and that they can save a little bit of money right from the start without a big capital outlay. So that's kind of like the holy grail of where we're going with it. We've set up a community benefit society in Walthamstow, and we're trying now to work with the local council, who's just become green, to install solar on 1,000 council houses, because that's a really good kind of thing that you could do with the co-op. So yeah, that's it. I hope that was interesting and useful, and I will switch myself off there, because no doubt after having so many presentations, it does get a little bit hard to keep up, doesn't it, in the evening. So there we go. That's the end of me. I'll switch myself off. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was absolutely fantastic. Much appreciated.
Thanks.
I learned a lot about your project that I didn't know. What a beautiful community effort. Wonderful way to pressure the government, I think. But now it's time to don't turn yourself off too much, because now it's time to hear from everyone else who's here, not just our speakers, for your comments, questions, clarifications, and contributions. If that's all of you that have been writing in the chat, and I invite even those of you that have had your questions answered already. I saw Ashley typing away furiously, to answer your questions. Even if you have had them answered, please come speak them to the room, share with the class, so we can all hear what you've also learnt. To come in, just raise your virtual hand there. You can find it at the React button at the bottom of your Zoom window, and click raise hand. And yeah, I will just bring people in the order that you come in. We already have someone, Carol.
Unmute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Okay. Well, the problem with the solar panel on my roof, and it's the same with social housing and private landlords, that they took advantage of the rent-a-roof scheme, where they rented the roof out to a company that would install the solar panels and get all the feed-in tariff payment. The council, I don't think, got anything, maybe a nominal rent, but the big, for private and social landlords, the big saving was they didn't have to do any upgrade to the fabric of the building to bring it up to a standard, which is exactly what the head of housing acknowledged in his letter to me. He said that the benefit I was getting from the solar panels probably outweighed the fact that other aspects of the property were below standard, which is crazy. If you haven't got the proper insulation, your property's not keeping the heat in there. So you're paying for heating that's going straight out the walls. And I've got thermal images showing that. So the FIT payment was going to the companies, and I can't see those companies wanting to give up any part of their income if you had like the Windfall Energy battery. I'm with Ecotricity, they might support it, but I don't think the company that's getting the feed-in tariff would want me to be drawing down on their profits that they're making. And the other thing I wanted to say, that like the Warm Homes discount or Warm Homes scheme, every scheme now should be fabric first. Upgrade all the physical aspects of a property. Yeah, I'm very much for solar and installing batteries, but the physical property needs to be improved. The insulation, floors, walls, windows, attics, everything. Because yeah, that needs to be done to save as much money, and then obviously saving more money if people have got solar. And one more, very quickly, so many people have put off installation of heat pumps and solar panels. As Jonathan pointed out, and the National Audit Office proved with the EcoForce scheme, the vast majority of installers seem to be either incapable or just simply not don't care about the quality of the work as long as they're getting the handouts from the government. That's just a few things that I made notes on during the talk. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Kath. Lots of food for thought there for sure. And does anyone want to come in on Carol's thoughts there from our speakers or the audience?
I suppose maybe one quick comment. I think broadly agree with everything you said, apart from perhaps a nuance on one thing. I do agree that Fabric First is a good approach. I think it shouldn't necessarily be like a universal kind of guidance. I think it can make sense. Solar is super cheap now. Wind power is abundant already at certain times.
Yes.
And it's true that actually in some homes, it might make more sense just to put an overabundance of solar on the roof. So it is generating in those times where the winter times that you mentioned and the kind of early morning hours. It does make sense in some homes just to over provision renewables because they're so cheap rather than kind of upgrade insulation. So I think broadly agree with you in most cases, but I think there are some nuances where it does make sense not to do that approach.
Thanks, Ashley. Much appreciated. Your thoughts on that?
I'd also can I just say something just generally to that worry about like bad installers type of thing. I think that's such a good point because so many, you ring up for a quote from an installer, or two or three, and then all of a sudden you get barraged with phone calls and everything, and most people won't know how to look for like key performance indicators of the different companies and run any form of analysis. And I don't really think that there's like that much. There's no like impartial information service about, different local installers where people live as well. And so I think, I think there are ways to do it, but I feel as if there should be a simple register, that people can go into and sort of look at the reviews, etc., specifically on this, because as you said that, there's a boom in solar now, which is brilliant. But there also needs to be a way of telling who are the cowboy ones and who are the ones that, and it needs to be, again, simple enough for people who don't know how to go to Companies House, download the accounts, work out how long that company's been in business, and look at, all that type of stuff. It should just be simple. So I think that could be a really useful thing to build somehow, like a database like that.
I agree.
Thanks, Daniel. Does anyone else want to come in on that? I know we have lots of expertise in the room, lots of people. Please feel free to just unmute yourself and comment. If you have a direct point on some of the things Carol raised and what we're talking about. Richard, do you have a direct point on this? Can't hear you, Richard. No, still not.
I can't hear Richard either, but from his what it says there, it's SO Solar Advice. So maybe he is that resource that I was just mentioning that needed to be built.
John, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I was just going to say local authorities usually aren't allowed to make recommendations, even if they know the track records of some companies operating in their area. But if you talk to local community energy groups, then there's usually quite a lot of advice to be had from quite a large number of people. So that probably gives you a fairly good idea of who's got a good reputation and who's dropped people in it.
Thanks, John. Ruth, do you want to come in on this as well?
Yeah, I mean, on the community energy groups, there's a huge amount of money now going from the government via community energy groups devoted to this. And uh, I think they're, especially if it can be a group of people and not just one individual, but even for an individual, quite a lot of them actually will actually help line up the actual work. So it's a very good way to try to get it done in a way that is not going to be likely to be a cowboy. I wanted to comment on the Fabric First thing because, again, I agree greatly in principle, but you do get a lot of homes that are actually quite hard to insulate, and you get a lot of residents who really don't want that disruption, particularly people who are older. Might have a loft, but insulating it, there's an awful lot of stuff in that loft that they've been like putting off dealing with for a very long time. And, people just don't want to do it. And insulation itself can also be quite a trap because, we've seen with the stuff that's happened with Eco4, how external insulation, cavity wall insulation, internal insulation, all of them can be done really badly and make things worse. So I think there are times when it's better to actually go to producing a lot of energy if it's green and free. I wanted to raise a different question though, if it's okay. Is that
Can you just hold on to
Yeah,
hold on to
sure.
it, Ruth, please? We
Yeah.
have Gwen. I think you had a different question as well. I just want to finish
Okay.
this point, finish these points, then we'll move on to a different question. Thank you, John. I saw we had Richard come back in. Can you is your audio working now?
Unmute.
Yes.
You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now,
Oh,
Richard.
Great. Yes, I had to leave and come back in again so I could get it to work. Yes, on the business of cowboy installers. You could talk about. I could talk about this for hours. If people have heard of the MCS standard, MCS registration, it's all solar installers are should be MCS certified. Some aren't, but even the fact that your installer is MCS registered is not a guarantee of quality. It's the absolute minimum floor standard. People should look for other qualifications as well. I take on board Dan's point about people not being able to necessarily interrogate information on company's house. There are some good Facebook groups out there where there's good advice. You can find out people's experience with particular installers. Be aware, though, some of those do tend to be engaged in a bit of a race to the bottom on price. This is for people who are in the kind of able to pay area. Be careful of that because with solar, as with most things, you get what you pay for. If someone's offering a very cheap price, there will be a reason for that, and it may not be a good one.
Thanks a lot for that, Richard. Much appreciated. I think we still have Jonathan and Anne perhaps on these points.
Yeah, just very quickly on following up on what's just been said. We've campaigned a lot against bad work done, and obviously solar has damaged some people's roofs. I put a link in the chat. We actually met the minister this week about this problem, and they've actually responded with a proposal, which I put the link in the chat, which is kind of improving consumer standards beyond just the basic kind of MCS and Trustmark things that we have at the moment. So if people are interested in that thing, maybe also feed any thoughts into that consultation of like what loopholes you think would still exist. I think there's some good steps in there, but it doesn't feel like enough to me. So it'd be good if other people could feed in what they think are the remaining loopholes that could allow, because we definitely don't want solar cowboys, right, wrecking all this investment going into solar, because that would just be a disaster.
Thanks, Jonathan. And Anne, also on these points.
Right, my point's a bit different actually.
Okay. Do you mind hanging on to it for just a minute, Anne?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah, I'll bring you in a minute. Thank you. If we don't have any more on this question, on these points, Carol, thank you for that. Lots of conversation happening there. Much appreciated. Gwen.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I moved from a 3-bedroomed house into an over 50s estate where we've got blocks of semi-detached bungalows. There's only 27 of us. It's lovely, but it costs a hell of a lot to heat our homes because it's a leasehold, even though we own our own houses. So we have a management fee of £3,000 approximately a year. And as I understand it, we are not allowed to have solar panels. We don't have gas anywhere. It's all electric. I had 4 storage heaters that are just gobbling up £185 a month with energy, and I've switched them off. So I wanted to know, how can we persuade these landlords to, or whoever, management companies, to allow us to have solar panels when it would help us all that are all electric?
Thank you very much, Gwen. I think, Jonathan, quick reaction there.
Yeah, I think this is a major gap in the government's thinking. Also applies to plug-in solar, obviously, where they're talking about, everyone in flats can now have plug-in solar, but what about the permissions around plug-in solar? The government has said it's looking into this, but I'm quite shocked you did a lot of thinking on plug-in solar, but didn't actually include rights to. Obviously, in Germany, there's been much more freedom to go ahead with putting solar in places that maybe we wouldn't be allowed to in the UK. And the government, if it's genuine about democratizing solar, it needs to actually follow through with rights for leaseholders to do this stuff. I agree, it's a gap in the system right now.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any more for Gwen on this, on Gwen's question?
Yeah, I'll just make one quick point, if I may. I think there's always a problem with solar that if you're using it for heating, the sun doesn't shine at the time of year when you need the most heat. So the contribution it would probably make towards running storage heaters and other electric heating is probably not as great as you would hope. In the long run, maybe what you want to think about is switching from storage heaters or other electric heaters to some kind of heat pump. But again, you've got the problem that you then would have to run the heat pump when the electricity was cheapest, and that may not be when you want the heat, and you can't really store heat terribly well. There are some things using phase change heat stores which are now being tested, so you can heat up your heat store overnight with a heat pump and then use that to heat your house during the day, but that's quite a novelty and not yet widespread. But I would certainly try and look at heat pumps and keep an eye on that development.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers, John. Fantastic. Ruth, do you want to come in on this as well? Nope, you're muted. Yeah.
Just as we're exposing a lot of stuff and working on this consultation for solar, we're also planning to campaign on the issue of storage heaters and the injustice that was highlighted about how, people can get a much better deal for powering electric vehicles overnight than for storage heaters overnight. Whereas, guess what? It's the poorer people with the storage heaters and the better off people with the EVs. But it works the opposite way around. So that's something else that we'll be working on, and that would address the issue that was raised, in addition to the right to put solar on the roof, which maybe, again, community energy groups would help with lobbying on that, and even like pressing local management committees, management services, and so on to actually allow it. I have also heard of Greenpeace sometimes being involved in similar things in relation to wind. So it might be possible to get local groups behind that demand, and certainly we'd back it.
Thanks, Ruth. I'll bring you back in just after Richard. I think you wanted to come in on this as well.
Yeah, just briefly on the point about solar only making a limited contribution to any form of electric heating. That's just as true of heat pumps as it is of storage heaters or any other form of electric heating, but that's where batteries really come in, partly because of the buffering effect in terms of storing excess solar to put into the heating. when the sun's not out, but also the ability for overcharging batteries at a cheap rate overnight. There are some specific tariffs designed for solar and batteries. In fact, there are some suppliers who have what are meant to be electric vehicle tariffs, but they do also allow battery-only systems to be connected as well.
Thanks, Richard. Much appreciated. Just circling back, I just noticed that Stu in the chat mentioned, that we've been at FPA, we've been supporting hundreds of victims of cowboy retrofitters and forced them to meet with the energy minister this week. And a little link in there to become a member of Fuel Poverty Action. As Ruth said, we can help you. We can back your demands, give a little bit of representation within our capacity. So Anne, I know you're waiting. I think Ruth, you had a question first. Do you wanna come in with that?
Okay, Anne can go first after spoken.
Okay, take it away.
Okay, thank you. I got 2 points really. One is just an anxiety, which is the thing about battery. I totally understand. However, batteries are environmentally appalling, and a lot of the lithium mines that are being set up are taking over communities all over the world that don't want them. And I'm just wondering if there's any way that we can get around that, because it's actually a real problem. The second thing is specifically to do with where I live. There's a landlord in particular who has been putting solar panels on all the roofs of his tenancies, his houses where he has tenants. And he somehow has this system whereby he has the use of those panels and that roof in perpetuity. So even if he sells the house, the new owner has to allow him to take the electric or whatever it is off the panels that are on the roof. And we think that's extraordinary that anybody can do that. That surely you ought to forfeit that right when you sell a property, don't you?
Yeah. How is that? How is that possible? Does someone have the answer? Rent a roof. John says rent a roof. Yeah. Or Richard. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like some pretty, let's say, smart legal practice there, especially if he'd be entitled to the. If he'd be entitled to export tariff after he sold the property. I'm really not sure how that's possible, because the export tariff usually goes to the person that owns the property, not a third party. But perhaps there are legal ways around that. I don't know what those would be though.
I mean, we thought it was really unacceptable, but he said that's it, that's the deal. He gets the feed-in tariff off that roof forever, and therefore he's allowed. He claims he can go into these properties to check the roof every now and then, sure that the what's it called, the thing which assembles the power that comes off the solar panels in the loft it was working okay, and he can go and do that forever, and they can't put in dormer windows and things like that because they've got solar panels which are not theirs.
Yeah,
it does sound as if he's selling the property with a charge on the property, which would apply to the anybody that owns it there afterwards. It's not impossible to do, but I wouldn't buy a property with that sort of condition on the mortgage. But that's a question for solicitors, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I understand. I think that's not. We don't really deal with people buying or selling. We just deal with the results of this awful guy. But yeah, it's only one guy as far as we're aware of. But the other thing he does is he has heat pumps as well, and he puts the pump bit, the fan section of the heat pump, right outside because they're terrace housing where we live, right outside the kitchen door of the resident next door. So all the time there's this awful noise outside their kitchen door. It's really unacceptable. But I think it was all done within permitted development, so they didn't have to get planning permission for any of it.
Sounds dubious to me.
Did we have Jonathan? And Jonathan, do you want to come on this, and John as well, perhaps?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it sounds like this issue around this rent-a-roof schemes where there were like 25-year leases using this incredibly generous feed-in tariff And then obviously he gobbled that up across all his properties at the same time, locked in thousands of pounds, for 25 years. So we're talking big bucks. But that effectively that roof is then, leased for that 25-year period. And that does cause a problem when people are selling. But obviously, if he's selling, the problem is for the buyer.
Yeah. Okay.
John?
Yeah, there's a document called MCS 020, which tells you what is permitted development for noise in terms of heat pumps. And that's now been updated to MCS 020A. Now, that essentially means that the installer has to do a calculation which proves that it will fall within the noise limits of permitted development. Now, if you can measure the noise and show that it doesn't, then you may have grounds to complain to the council that it's a noise nuisance. That might force them to put in quieter heat pumps. So Mitsubishi, for example, are pretty quiet, but other makes, generally less so. So I would, work from MCS 020 or the version of it that was in force at the time when they were installed.
Right. Have you come across this from elsewhere?
Well, we do heat pump installations, so we've come across it all the time. I mean, we would always do a noise calculation to establish that the noise level wouldn't be excessive. Now, it may be that people are just unusually sensitive to sound. People do perceive it in different ways, but if it's blatantly above the permitted limits and you can measure it and show that it's above those limits, then I think the council should take an interest in terms of noise nuisance.
Okay. That's great. Thank you very much. Really useful.
Thanks, John. Yeah, Ashley.
Yeah, I wanted to come back on the first comment because I think it's a important issue around battery environmental impact, and I'll be honest, I don't have all the answers for you. I think we need to look really carefully at batteries, but there are some interesting things to note. So there are different types of lithium batteries. There are ones called NMC and LFP. NMC are the ones that have cobalt and other kind of conflict minerals in. LFP are becoming far more common now. Still has lithium in, but it has far less of those conflict minerals in. So a lot of those issues you hear about are kind of removed from the chemistry level. Someone mentioned in the comment as well, sodium batteries, which remove the lithium and replace it with sodium. They're becoming much more commercially viable. Not fully commercially viable yet. We're using LFP, the lithium battery, without the rare earths that we said. But even within that, you can be like with anything. There can be really bad supply chains of things, and there can be really good supply chains of things. And so you can be very deliberate in where you buy your batteries and where the metals and minerals that go into them come from. We're an early stage startup. We're taking that really seriously. I think we can do more and more of that as we grow. I'd love to look at sodium batteries when they become more commercially viable, but sadly not as commercially viable as we would love right now. But yeah, it's a big issue. There's a lot of work being done on it. I worked in a previous role in this kind of mining space, so I know it quite deeply. But yeah, what I want to say is not all lithium batteries are the enemy. Like there are different gradients within that.
Thank you, Ashley. Very interesting. I didn't know that. John? Oh, you gotta unmute yourself, John.
Sorry, just comes back to this batteries environmental impact question. I agree completely, it's horrendous. I don't want to decry that in any way. But if you have even a really, really big domestic battery, 20, 30 kilowatt hours or something like that, you would still, with a, say, 30 kilowatt hour battery, be looking at something that weighs a quarter of a ton or something, and that sounds really gross. But if you add up the weight of fossil fuels that you would put through a boiler during its life, it's massively more. You've got to compare the extraction to make the battery versus the extraction to run a fossil fuel system for 15, 20 years. So, I think you've got to do, quite a serious life cycle analysis, I think, to reach a conclusion. But my hunch is that it's considerably less if you can facilitate renewable energy use by using batteries.
Definitely. I know we've done a lot of the life cycle assessments and how quickly do you pay off the carbon emitted from producing the battery, and we're sub 5 years for sure, under 5 years of operation. The battery is warranted for 10, will last even longer than that in most circumstances. So it's a net positive input. It doesn't mean we can ignore kind of other supply chain issues. We have to take those seriously as well, but there is a net carbon benefit to batteries already.
Yeah.
Super, thank you. And for those of you that are interested, we actually did a little fuel for thought about this as well. While on the subject of minerals used in renewable energy and how that impacts people, mostly in the global south, and also a relationship with war. You can check that out on our YouTube in the Fuel for Thought channel. Couple of hands up still from Carol and Stephen. Carol, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just quickly talk. Oh, sorry, I sound a bit loud. Just quickly, I'm just wondering, the people that have got the sort of technical battery knowledge, what is their knowledge of sand batteries? They've been developed in Finland. Are they aware of this technology?
Maybe others know better. I think that's if I understand correctly, there's a kind of a heat battery. So what you do is heat up sand, and sand will stay hot if put in an insulated thing for a long time, and then you can use that heat later. So it's a bit like a water storage tank, but more so can store more heat. So a great solution for storing, it's also like a storage heater, I suppose, on a different level. So yeah, it can be a great solution. Sand is abundant, sand is cheap, really easy way to store heat to make it make an impact on your bills. So yeah, haven't seen many, but sounds interesting.
Well, apparently they can store 100 megawatts, and they can keep it at that heat for up to 6 months. So when
with enough sand, I suppose you can do whatever scale you want. I suppose, yeah. Enough sand and enough insulation, you could store heat for a long time. Yeah, sounds really interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
I guess the problem with sand batteries is to get a significant amount of energy stored, you need to work them at a very high temperature. And if we're looking at things like heat pumps as a heat source, then heat pump was going to be comfortable working at up to, say, 45 degrees if you really want to get the best efficiency out of it, ideally less than that. And where I've come across these sand batteries is industrial settings where they're running at hundreds of degrees. So it's a slightly different sort of type of energy storage or temperature range of energy storage. That's where it comes back to these sort of phase change heat stores that I touched on earlier, because they will absorb and discharge energy at a more or less constant temperature. So if you can get the right phase change material, you can have something the size of a washing machine that can hold enough heat to run your house for a day, and charge it up overnight with a heat pump on cheap electricity, and then just not run the heat pump at all until the following night. Now, one of those has been trialled in the Meadows in Nottingham, and I don't know what the results of that were, but I'm in touch with the guy at Sunamp, who I think was involved with the trials from a technical point of view. If anybody's got any questions about that, I'm quite happy to talk to Sunamp about it.
Cheers, John. Yeah, feel free to put your email in the chat if you want, if you don't mind. People
just thought that sand, as a very plentiful and non-toxic medium, would sort of be a much better option than lithium and the other harmful. Well,
I guess they're storing different things. So lithium stores electricity, sand will store heat. So I guess we need both of these technologies, but different applications.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you. I'm just aware we're sort of 1 minute away from 8 p.m. I want to get through people's questions. Maybe we can just run over for 5 minutes, but let's make it quick. Stephen and then Ruth.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I just wanted to maybe even link back between that. There was a mention there about the balance between what's worse, using conflict minerals or relying on extraction, and making a balance there. But then also linking that back to the argument before about Fabric First and reducing the need in the first place, which is another way of resolving that balance. And particularly when we're in this moment where the conversation is about electrification of everything. And yeah, I think a lot about everyone replacing their cars with electric cars, but maybe, if there was more investment in public transport and things like that, that would reduce the demand, and then we would be kind of solving all the problems at once. So yeah, there's a lot of like very connected ways to think about this, and yeah, and unfortunately that makes it quite overwhelming. So
thank you, Stephen. Ruth?
Yeah, it was a question I wanted to raise earlier. It's kind of a general one about the fact that when you get extra power, we're talking about sharing the benefits, and there's a bit of a tension between making sure that people get what is coming off their own roof as individuals and making something more communally beneficial. And I think a lot of people are worried that if you do it communally, they're not actually going to get the benefit. It's going to be like, oh, well, the landlord gets the benefit of what comes off our social housing roof, and says that actually that they therefore reduce the charges to us or reduce the rent or something. But how do you really believe that? As against the fact that actually it can be a lot fairer when it's done, when things are done communally, which I think Jonathan referred to earlier. And it's a kind of question that I think we might be able to come back to. We are having a conference in the autumn on the 19th of September about Make Green Fair, and it's going to be an opportunity to go into specific issues, including, solar energy. And it's been a fantastic discussion tonight, and those last points from Stephen were really, I'm glad we had the extra minute for it. But there's obviously an awful lot more to go into, and if people can put that date in your diaries now, and keep in touch with us to hear the details, because there's going to be lots of other issues, storage heaters, but also loads of other things at that conference, and comparing notes on the different things. Sometimes the same issues like communal versus individual will come up again and again.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Just to give us the date again, please.
19th of September in Manchester.
Wonderful, thank you. That's perfect. We have one final hand. Is it very quick, Kathy?
Yes, I just wondered if anyone had any experience of Axel Energy, which claims that it can take spikes in production of renewable energy on the grid, and then you charge. It enables people to charge their batteries at that spike time, like when it's a really windy day. And as we know, Shetland wind farms are being told to shut down their farms and being paid to do so. And this claims that it can spread those spikes of energy in home batteries around the country. And does anyone have any experience of that?
Sounds like, yeah, Richard and Ashley want to come in on this, yeah.
Ashley, do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I know the Axel people, the good people. So I think it's broadly doing exactly what I described our battery as doing, right? We have software to do what you say, charge up when renewable energy is abundant on the grid, and then power back your home or to the grid during the constrained times. Axel is a great solution if you already have a battery. If you have a battery that is paired with your solar panel and you want to use that in an additional way to help get some money by supporting the grid, it's a neat solution. They'll join on to connect to your battery kind of digitally and do what they say of helping balance the grid with that. So it's a nice solution if you have batteries in your home.
Right, thank you very much for your advice.
No worries.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I'm signed up with Axel fairly recently, since the demise of Gig.
Richard, we lost you there. So I'm gonna move on to John and Ray. Sorry about that, Richard. Your sound just cut out. John, do you want to come back in? No. Ruth?
Yeah, just on the mass storage, there are also local campaigns against battery farms in areas where people think that they're a danger, first of all, because of the flammability, but also that they're worried that what's going to happen is that the excess when there's a lot of wind, for example, will get snapped up by these battery farms and then sold back to people at a profit. And it's like a commercial opportunity as an alternative to actually letting the energy that they can't sell because it's too expensive, let that actually go to people for free as part of Energy for All. So it's just a bit of a nuance on that situation. Of course, the other alternative is that AI will probably step in to try to sop up all the so-called excess and thereby make all our bills more expensive.
Thanks for that, Rick. Richard, do you want to finish your point?
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I've got a poor connection this end. Yeah, what we're saying. Axel, yes. They may do the charging at cheap rate. I'm signed up to them purely for at this stage for the service they provide of using my battery to support the grid when there are high demand points and getting paid quite generously for doing that. So as you say, if you've got a battery already, that's a very useful additional payment. And on the commercial batteries, just yes, I'm aware of campaigns to object to battery storage as part of new solar, large-scale commercial solar farms. There are a lot of campaigning groups against that are being, I suspect, have got money behind them from sources that don't want to see renewables grown. A lot of the resistance in relation to fire risk is based on different cases from places like the United States, where the batteries that have been involved have been different technologies. They've been stored and used in different situations which don't occur here. I've looked at the inside of some of the sort of containerized battery storage that's used on some of those farms. They have built-in fire suppression. It's very difficult for one to get out of control alike, and in most cases they're a long way from dwellings anyway. So the campaigns against that are causing some commercial developers to pull batteries from their commercial applications purely to avoid those objections.
Interesting. Thank you, Richard. Jonathan, final points?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in general, I think it would be much better if we did more community batteries rather than these privately funded batteries. So the benefit can then go to the community rather than being a profit stream. And obviously there's this consultation. I'll put the link in to read about that.
Cheers. Yes, cut out these middlemen. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. That was very interesting. Not much more to say about it. I learned so much. Yeah, check out those final links that I sent in the chat for 1st of July, our Make Green Fair petition, become a member of Fuel Poverty Action, and also a little link in there to let us know how you found the session. Give us some feedback. Very useful for me. Keep an eye out on your emails. We communicate everything that we do through our mailing list. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, put the 19th of September, save the date. Yeah, we don't have a full like a published event for that yet, but so yeah, just keep it in your calendar for that for now. See you. The next Fuel for Thought is going to be on the 23rd of July. And yeah, again, look out for an email from us about that. Have a lovely evening. Give us a wave, unmute yourself, say goodbye, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for the great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.